if you can use, since the city purchased it, if you can use my ticket that I didn't get to use to go to Dallas.
Oh, you're in there.
Sorry.
We'll talk.
Yes. All right. I call the special meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted in person and by video conference. Public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or by joining the Zoom webinar. Public may also watch this meeting live on the city's YouTube channel or Comcast cable channel 30 in city limits. There may be opportunities for the public to speak during today's meeting. If you are at City Hall and would like to speak to council, please fill out a yellow comment card and hand it to a city staff person. If you are on Zoom and would like to speak to council, please send an email to city staff at ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov and raise your hand and or comment in the chat when it's time to speak. The Zoom chat will only be open during comment time. If you come to City Hall to speak, please be aware that seating in council chambers is limited. When it's time to take public comment, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and the Zoom participant list and chat. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Written comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. The public may also participate in Zoom webinar by phone by dialing 1-253-215-8782, entering webinar ID 837-5111-0754, and passcode 107967. If you're calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are also available in other languages. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The City of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya, etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. Okay, council vacancy and special election. It's a resolution. It will be presented by our recorder, Scott Stoffer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. Good to be with you this evening. A couple of items here for you on your special session, both related to what happened a week ago on May 3rd. As the community now knows, Councilor Angel Falconer resigned from position 1. This, as defined in the city charter, creates a vacancy, and the city council is then called upon to take a couple of actions to fill the vacant position. As laid out in the staff report, I'm going to pull up the resolution because the first action we're asking council to do 3 things all in one motion, so it might be helpful to share. And it's of course in the packet that was shared, posted last Friday, but as requested or required by the city charter, the council needs to pass a resolution acknowledging the vacancy, declaring the position vacant, and calling for a special election. And that's what the staff report lays out, the charter requirements for that. And this is the resolution that council will be asked to adopt in a moment. Special election process in Milwaukie, and I think in Oregon generally, is about a 4-month process. There are some city charter things unique to Milwaukie that set that time frame, the first of which is The charter says no election can be held without at least 60 days or no less than 60 days, so 2 months notice. So we have that. And then also when you go to look at how one runs for city council, it lays out a filing window of between 70 and 100 days. So that backs you out to about 3+ months. And then with an appropriate amount of time to tell the public that you're going to have a filing window, you back out to about 4 months. So that's the cycle for a city election process. And on top of that, the city, as is the custom of most cities in Oregon, adopt state election law. And state election law identifies only 4 days a year where an election can be held. They're all Tuesdays. Generally, they're the first, or well, no, not generally. They're Tuesdays in various months. March, May, August. Now that's a relatively new one. It used to be September. Now it's the last week in August. And then, of course, November. And so based on the timing of Councilor Falconer's resignation, 4 months out gets us past the August deadline. So we're on to November, which means that the special election to replace, to fill vacant position 1 will be on the same ballot as the regularly scheduled city council elections, which for this year are positions 2 and 4 and the mayor's spot. So we will have 4 seats, the city will have 4 seats on the ballot this November. So that's the process. That's what the charter asks council to do. Happy to take any questions about the process, or in the packet, we included Councilor Falconer's resignation, this resolution, as well as the candidate information packet, which we customarily post about this time of the year on the city elections page, which is milwaukeeoregon.gov/elections. And we'll be updating that probably tomorrow or this week for sure. So any questions from council?
I was just going to comment, you may have said it and I missed it, but just that the election for position 1, Councilor Falconer's, will be to fill the remainder of her term. It is not a 4-year term, it's a 2-year term.
Absolutely correct. I don't think I did mention that. Thank you, Council President. That is correct. Councilor Falconer was reelected or elected to the current term in 2020, which means the term began this January 2021 and runs through the end of 2024. So the person elected at the November ballot will serve from the date that the election is certified, which is probably the second council meeting in December. So the end of 22, very end of 22, until the end of 2024. So that's right. It's a 2-year term. Thank you. But for all intents and purposes, once the election is called here in a moment by council, the process for filing is going to be exactly the same process as filing for the other positions. The same 70 to 100 day window will apply based on the timelines and the laws and the charter requirements that I laid out. So if folks interested in running for vacant position number 1 at the November election can look at these dates, which we will of course post online as well. But, and I will say Milwaukie has a generally shorter and later filing period than most cities in the state. The state law allows for a 60-day, 2-month filing period. Milwaukee's charter calls for 30-day. So you may have friends running for office in other cities and they start at the end of June and July. Milwaukee's filing period this year is August, basically, the month of August. And here are the dates to be qualified to run in November's election. So any other questions?
Pretty clear.
Yep. Been through this a couple of times now. All right. We had talked about people being able to testify, but there is no point in the
That is correct.
agenda for that. Would this be that moment?
It could very well be if there's anybody. Is there anybody on Zoom interested? Anybody raised hands? Anybody in the audience?
Nothing on Zoom? Nope. She's shaking her head no, and you're shaking your head yes. I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on here. Cool, thank you. Any questions for Scott? In that case, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution acknowledging the resignation of Counselor Angel Falconer, noting a vacancy on council, and calling for a special election.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution acknowledging the resignation of Counselor Angel Falconer, noting a vacancy on council, and calling for a special election. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The motion passes unanimously. So our next item is interim council member recruitment discussion. Again, with our city recorder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good to be sitting where I was a few seconds ago. So following the action you just took to call a special election, the charter also lays out a process and an opportunity for the city council to appoint an interim member of the council. I believe the spirit of that is that the charter recognized, that the voters recognized that there could be a 4-month period between somebody leaving council and a special election. And so it might be good to have members, a full council when possible. So we took a look at, as the mayor alluded to, we've been through this a couple times in the last decade, and we took a look at that process. And basically it's what we've set up for council, and this is where we're going to lay out a process. And if council has input that you'd like to tweak the process, I'm definitely going to pull up the form here in a moment. There were too many questions on that form and they're redundant. I did that on purpose. We'll go over that in a minute. But the basic proposal recommendation based on what council's done before is there's a form and about a 2-ish week filing period. We'll get it live as quick as we can, ideally tomorrow or certainly this week. And we'll advertise it on social media. Unfortunately, the window that we have to deal with, it's a 30-day, once the resignation has been submitted, the council has 30 days to appoint someone interim. So to make sure we meet that charter requirement, we don't have time to get into the pilot, unfortunately, but we'll do everything else we can to promote, advertise, social media, word of mouth, all these good things. So there's a form, an application process, and then at the end of that filing period, staff will make sure, the only vetting we will do is make sure that they meet the requirements to be on council, which is a registered voter in the state of Oregon, and that they live within the city of Milwaukie. There was a little bit of a question, which I'll get to on the form. There is usually a 6-month filing. You have to have lived in the city for 6 months prior. And the charter references say 6 months prior to an election. This isn't an election situation with an interim appointment, so we've generally suggested that means 6 months from the date of appointment, which as suggested in this process would be May 31st. Otherwise, the charter just says someone who's qualified to be a member of council, and it's the residency and it's the voter registration. So that's kind of how we got to that point. So application, couple-week process. At the end, staff will make sure that the folks who apply are indeed eligible to be on council, and then we'll provide those applications to council to review. And staff is recommending or proposing that if council scheduling is available on Tuesday, May 31st, we would have a special session here at City Hall for council to interview the applicants, deliberate, and then make a selection. And then at the end of that meeting, the new council member would be sworn into office. That's kind of how it's played out before. So I'll jump into the form, but is there any questions, concern about that general process and schedule? Okay. And for the public, we did put a timeline to graph. Thank you to Jordan in the city manager's office for putting this graphic together, but this, looking at the nods from council, this will generally be the lay of the land. So today we're here, council will give the direction to go ahead with the process May 11th, or as soon as possible this week, we'll get the application posted online and accept applications until the 23rd, and then council will hold a special session on the 31st. Okay, so that's where we are, good to go. The questions, the application form. We have, oops, I need to stop share. Go find another one, which is the Word. So this is our newer, the newer version. The bones of this application are the newer board and committee form that we used. And then we updated it to be for interim city councilor. It sounds like everyone's good with that. So we'll de-highlight May 23rd. That'll be the deadline. And then these two questions are on there because we have to verify that they are qualified to be on council. For our board and committee application, you may recall our conversation earlier this year, we did remove this because we don't need to actually have registered voters. But for this one, since it's a requirement, there's that. And as I just mentioned, there's the 6-month requirement to be a member of council. So usually that's in reference to an election date, but since we're not talking about an election, we're talking about appointment. We backed up 30 days from May 31st, the date we're proposing council do the interviews and select someone. So that's what that's about. And then these are all the questions I've been able to find on the versions of this form going back to 2012 or whenever. So I don't expect all these to stay, and you may have other ideas. So we can do a little wordsmithing together. Hopefully it's not too painful, but that's generally what I was proposing. The ones I've highlighted are basically the same question. So if you have a preference for one or the other, we'll just maybe start with that. It's the basic, tell us about yourself and why you're interested in council. So kind of open up to the floor and do. Is there a preference for the shorter version or the longer version?
Sorry, don't you have to have lived in the city for 6 months? Did I misunderstand that?
6 months prior to appointment or election.
But we would be, May 8th is 2022 is,
Yes, I'm sorry, Council President. The version in the packet said May 8th.
okay.
The one that I was working on earlier today says November 30th. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
And I hadn't highlighted the one, correct, November 30th.
I'm just looking down here instead of there, that's all.
The packet version says May 8th. Good catch, thank you. Yeah. So these two highlighted questions are the same thing. Is there a preference for one or the other version or edits to one or the other?
Feels like the second one is going to produce clearer answers or more well-defined answers, maybe?
Sure. So I hear a vote in favor of the second one version. See another head nod? Okay.
I'm okay with that. I don't feel strongly about it.
Okay, I'm going to delete the top one. Does that sound okay, Councilor Nicodemus?
Is there a way we can put life experiences in that second question? Is there a good way to put it in there? If it isn't, I'm fine. The second question being the way it is.
Just editing. Tell me to stop or start something else.
Sure.
There's some, well, you can work out the grammar. There's some grammar disagreement,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that just works.
Playing with that, but something, I can clean that up, but that general idea, does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Something, we'll fix that. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to delete the top one.
So that civic community, I like that question, but I don't really like having that be the first question out the gate.
Yeah.
I think that should be one of the last questions.
I think the highlighted one should be probably the first question.
Question out the gate, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
And I would still move that one toward the end somewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said something about that question because I often find that when we're doing interviews for boards, that I ask a couple more leading questions and people tell me all this cool stuff they're doing that doesn't get elicited by asking about your community and civic affiliations and activities. And I almost wonder if a more casual wording would be useful there, like what do you care about and how do you express that? You know, do you volunteer in your kid's classroom at school or, I don't know, there's a million different things you could do. But anyway, just sort of an observation I have around how that question has worked in interviews in the past.
Well, maybe, yeah, I mean, maybe civic affiliations seems a little, maybe community and
Involvement?
volunteer.
Yeah.
I.e. volunteer.
Yeah.
all that
Right,
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, spell it out a little.
Like that? Oops. Oxford comma. Does this involvement question sort of get at the same thing that this last question does?
I don't know. The last one is nice and open. So it really offers itself to anything. So I don't think that's a bad question.
I mean, if you want to, you have to, but you could just put in parentheses, no is an acceptable answer. Because people often get stressed out about feeling like they have to answer that question in an interview process. I don't want it to be stressful.
I like that idea.
Where would you put that? At the header? Or?
You're just talking about the last question?
Yeah, just the last question.
Yeah.
Just in parentheses. You can say no.
This may be the right amount of questions. If council's okay with it, we can, this is your process. These are the questions that you want folks to tell you.
The only thing I would add, much like I did in the committee questionnaire, if we're addressing one of the council goals, I think we should address both of the council goals specifically.
So add a climate question.
Yeah. So how would you?
If we put that in, can we take out, explain what you think the city should do or accomplish to improve?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that question anyway.
Do you have an angle on the climate question? Or do you want me to go back and see what we did on that interview question?
Do you want me to look that up?
It's a tough one.
Tell us your thoughts on the city's work to address climate change and any ideas to improve that.
That should be a question mark at the end.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
think
works.
this is pretty
That work?
well-rounded. Yeah.
One
Cool.
quick question. You all could end up reading a lot of these or not a lot of these. We don't know yet. Do you want a word limit on any of these answers? Otherwise, you might just get people copy and pasting resumes straight into
Yeah.
the questions.
Good point. Good point.
I would like a word limit.
Should we say like 200 words per question at the absolute most? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to do this as a PDF document, PDF fillable, so people can download it, print it. We will have copies available at City Hall if anybody would like us to print copies for them. If anyone needs any assistance completing this form, they can contact the Office of the City Recorder and we'd be happy to walk them through that. And then I'll also point out that the second part of these are the same questions we asked for our board and committee. It's the, how did you find out about us? Are you on a board or committee now? Or do you live with anybody who's on a board and committee? And then the general demographic questionnaire that we're asking all of our board and committee members. Is council okay with this part of it being on there?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, my question was, go back up.
Up.
Why do we care? Why do we ask them, if appointed, would you run to hold the seat?
Thank you for pointing that out. That was a question that your predecessors asked in different points. There is no requirement to do so. I absolutely meant to ask the council that before.
And, somebody might change their mind. I mean, it
They
seems
have
a
done
weird,
so.
it seems a weird thing to box somebody into.
Yeah.
We can strike it if that's what the council wants.
I don't have strong feelings about it. I always found it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's information you can choose to volunteer.
Exactly,
If you want.
exactly.
Like-
If somebody wants to say,
I'm going to do an Akasha Lawrence and I'm going to fill in this vacancy
right,
so that it's an open field in the election.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody could volunteer that, but
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings one way or the other.
So it's, am I? Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you for catching that. I totally meant that, because that was something that had been pointedly asked before. Intentionally asked. Okay, so there's the form. What else I need to know? We'll put this up on the city's website tomorrow. We'll advertise it, we'll share it with council and let the public know about it. And then on May 31st, we'll call a special session for the interviews and the selection process and the swearing in of an interim member of council who will serve effective the end of the evening of May 31st through probably the December 20th meeting, because we have to wait for the certified election results, and those are generally made available by the county elections office by mid-December. So
When do we start the board and committee interviews?
the one that's ongoing right now,
Or it is before that, isn't it?
May 21st.
It's not going to save us.
it's Saturday, yeah.
It's a Saturday, and the spark hires for that are ongoing, and we're getting a really good turnout from that. And so thank you to Julie Light and HR for being our champion and really helping us push that out. We hope to get links to videos for the panelists, including all council, to watch in the coming days.
So you are getting good turnout. Okay. I was a little concerned because I noticed that our list online doesn't show future vacancies. It only shows current vacancies, and so it's not very many. So I was worried that the participation might be low. But
We're
I'm glad
north
to
of
hear-
50 applications probably, and anybody who applied after April 29th is not part of the spark hire process, but will be included on the interviews on May 21st. So do hold your May 21st time, because there will be interviews beyond what's on spark hire to be had.
Just to make sure, anyone who's watching tonight who may be interested in the council seat, those interviews are on air. So you will be in a dialogue with the council, and then the discussion is also on air, as is the appointment, just so that people are fully prepared that this is a very, very public and very transparent process.
Yep.
Thanks.
With that, we will, any other questions, thoughts about the interim recruitment process? We'll get the form ready to go and post it online, and we'll share the link with council and the community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our last item for this evening, I believe, is to discuss parks. That's very broad.
It is, and it's actually a council discussion tonight. So I'm happy to kick it off. But basically, there's been some discussions that council's been having with individuals at Clackamas County at the board level. There's also been some interest to have a discussion amongst all of you on the dais about where you are on parks. So this really was just a space for you all to talk.
Where to begin?
Well, in 1942, well, I'll kick it off, I guess. So we have been in a process now, and I was being half serious when I said in 1942. We've been in a process now to build out Milwaukie Bay Park for at least 5 mayors ago.
For at least a quarter century. It was
Yeah.
the late 90s, at least a quarter century.
We have been, first we were purchasing properties and then clearing those properties and then getting grants and beginning to build the park. And we've done 2 of what we hoped would be 3 phases. And we did that all by ourselves without any help, I believe, whatsoever from North Clackamas Parks District. We are in a parks district, theoretically. They are meant to not only maintain our parks, but to build parks. We had a master plan for that park. That was a pretty good master plan. And the Parks District didn't think much of our master plan, so they did a new master planning process and came out with a new master plan that cost 3 times as much as the old master plan, estimated. And since then have roundly proceeded not to figure out how to fund that park. There were ample opportunities. There is, the vast majority of the funding is identified. It simply requires a vote of the county commission, who serves as the Parks Board, unfortunately. And there have been games played by particular individuals on the county commission, one particular individual on the county commission, for whatever reason, that keeps stopping the required vote to proceed with the process and do the engineering and build the park. Does that more or less bring us up to date?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would
add anything in?
Yeah, I would add that it's been the politics that have, the way it has played out has been, I think, largely invisible to the public, or the story has been shaped by county commission. And so I just want to offer that we have repeatedly negotiated in good faith with the county and been quite responsive. And then we hit this wall of 9 months. It's been over 9 months now, I think, of waiting and getting a runaround and just being repeatedly put off on simply getting the county commission to have a discussion about the IGA on air and to vote to approve it. And it took strong language from the mayor to get us to a point where we actually received a draft IGA back, and we did not receive it until, I believe, this afternoon. Maybe it was this morning. I don't know the actual time. And in that document, it was revealed finally that the thing that has been holding this up is they do not want to allow a provision that has been in there since 2008 that would allow us to leave the district. It has been our suspicion all along that this was the sticking point. And I don't know, I guess I feel disappointed. It's not a personal disappointment, but it is a disappointment that it took so much to just get to the point where that was out in the open. And it is disappointing to me that the terms that they require simply to build this park that our community has been promised for years are to require us to tie the hands of future councils and to not allow our community to make their own self-determination going forward. So I am disappointed that is the outcome, that our suspicions were.
Well, and I think it's all against the backdrop of Happy Valley having withdrawn from the district, and a very acrimonious and several year process that took. And so they've been worried, but their actions have explained to us why. We are not it's very interesting because we are not in the same position as Happy Valley in so many ways. We bought our own parks, that we had, we were in better position than Happy Valley. We don't have the massive amounts of SDCs Happy Valley has. So, they're not comparing apples to apples to compare us to Happy Valley. But this whole process has really felt like them wanting us to leave, really. or at least some subset of them wanting us to leave. I mean, they say, we don't want to build a park and then have you leave. But everything, the last 3 years, so it's been 3 years since they finished the new concept plan. We did have a pandemic in there, so that, made for some amount of delay. But really, it was in late 2020 that we sent them our IGAs and our commitments of our funding to the park. So it's been 18 months that we have been negotiating various things and I will call out the counselor. I'm happy to call him out. It's Counselor Paul Savas, who time after time pulls things off of county commission agendas, to delay them. He drew out and manipulated the selection of members for the district advisory committee. That became this prolonged thing that former counselor Wilda Parks was our representative at that time, struggled through for like 2 years. It took forever. Everything is an ordeal. Everything feels like it's being stacked against Milwaukie. The current discussions about SDC policies in the district and the way that it feels like there's a move to slow down Milwaukie Bay Park, to maybe revisit the funding in light of new approaches to SDCs. There's just so many things that Commissioner Savas has done to derail Milwaukie Bay Park for the last, 3 years, possibly longer. And the rest of the commission, unfortunately, don't live in the district. Most of them don't even live anywhere near the district. And so it's not top of mind for them. And they he's their representative to this entity, to the district advisory committee, and they kind of let him run things, it feels like. So, I think it's time to at least explore what our options are for leaving the district.
Well, he even attempted to manipulate the outcome of the DAC advisory vote, thinking that would give him something to stand on to suggest that our park not move forward. And the district advisory unanimously
Voted, yeah. Well,
advised.
I'd like to add in those DAC meetings. The narrative has been put out there, Milwaukie versus the rest of the district, where that's not the case. All of the parks in Milwaukie are available to everyone in the district. And just because Milwaukie Bay Park happens to be in Milwaukie doesn't mean it's Milwaukie specific, that only people who live in Milwaukie can do it. And time again in these DAC meetings, it's the district, Milwaukie, the district, Milwaukie, and it's very intentional. And it's very intentional and strategic, and it drives me crazy because multiple times, not just myself, but other folks in that committee have asked the chair of that committee to stop doing that and make sure that we're talking about the entire district. And, I agree with Councilor Beatty. It's just, I felt like they put it out there in the ether that we're afraid you might leave, but really their thing is, we want you to go. So I think it's time to look at possibly leaving as well.
Right, and the reason we've had these thoughts for years because of this attitude, and the reason we've maintained and continued to negotiate and continued to work in good faith and continued to have conversations is because we tried very hard to stay in the district. When we started the district would not exist if it weren't for Milwaukie. So we had no intentions of leaving the district, but their attitude has become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and their treatment of us has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I agree. I'm done, trying to convince them to do the right thing. I'm fully in support of exploring how we just do it ourselves.
I think it's important to say that, the one part that makes this hard for me is that there are a lot of great people in the staff of NCPRD.
Yeah.
And so I want them to not feel like this is targeted at them.
Yeah,
No.
got nothing to do with the staff.
And in fact, we have often heard staff used as an excuse for why something isn't moving forward, and I will blatantly push back, very, very strongly push back every time. Staff has worked so hard to make Milwaukie Bay Park work and to make it possible, and this is not on the backs of the staff of NCPRD.
Nope.
I would agree with that. I've talked to a lot of the staff there, and they work very hard, and they want this project to move forward too, but unfortunately they can't. So.
Well, and since it is coming up in the negotiation over Milwaukie Bay Park, I do feel like, obviously, if we were to continue negotiation, we would want to have a very clear and full understanding from staff about what we're giving up and what our options are. So we do need to ask for more input and more information from staff about what does this look like? How would we leave the district? What does this IGA draft that they've just sprung on us actually mean? And we haven't really had time to explore that. So, but I do think we need to ask for that information.
Is there anything else you feel like you need? Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. My head's a little stuffy.
So the next steps then are that staff we have a couple of meetings we need to do. We'll inform the leadership of the staff side of the leadership that this discussion has taken place. And we'll start the process of trying to get a better understanding of what options the city has. I also heard something in there that I just want to talk about real fast. So there was a draft that was providing of an IGA that was provided this morning. Are you all asking us to actually create response to that, or are you asking, what are you asking around the IGA from this group? Okay.
I would not put any time into that at this moment.
I would decline that.
I think we should know where we stand first.
Okay.
And if we then, at that point, want to re-enter conversations with them, we can say, under these conditions, we are willing, if you whatever, hit this timeline or whatever, however but we need to know what our options are before we can.
And I think we recognize this is not a easy lift, right? It's how can we, under what terms can we leave? And then also, what do we have to do to create our own entity, which we've never had? So.
Well, we did have. We had a parks department at one point.
Yeah. Okay.
So the whole
the
whole shedding of departments by cities, like the fire department, we had a fire department too. And it's all to do with tax structure. And we have this very limited tax structure. So the only way to continue to have a bigger tax structure in order to provide things like parks and fire departments is to shed them from the city government and create special districts. This is the craziness that is Oregon due to our tax structure. But we did do it before. We can do it now. There are other options besides special districts that we can explore. And, when the last time that this was brought to a vote of the people, do you want to reform the Parks District so we can change the financial dynamic? The only part of the district that actually passed that was Milwaukie. The rest of the district did not pass that. So people in Milwaukie are very supportive of parks. And I firmly believe we can handle and frankly improve. And again, no knock on the staff of NCPRD, they are working with an exceedingly limited budget. Typical parks district of that size has a budget that is 2 to 3 times what theirs is.
Well, I remember from the 2014 election, and assuming that it hasn't even gone up more, the Tualatin Valley Parks Department, which is, you know, sort of a lot of the west side, it has 4 times as much. Their price per thousand that they pay is almost $2, and it's 54 cents here.
Right. And I think Bend is $1.50 or something. So 3 times as much. So the 2 comparable parks districts in the state are significantly better funded. And for whatever reason, the rest of the district has no interest in keeping up with reality. So,
Well, but all of that is well beyond the point of just asking for more
Yeah.
information about the process. This is not relevant to this discussion right now.
They're like the kid on the playground who's playing a game and starts to get beat and then starts to change the rules in the middle of the game.
Yes.
And it's as simple as it is.
Yeah. And I also want to acknowledge that these negotiations have taken a lot of time and effort on the part of our staff. So thank you to Peter, to Kelly Brooks, Peter Passarelli, our Public Works Director, Kelly Brooks, who's the wearer of all hats, Ann Ober, our city manager. I'm with Justin, our city attorney. It's a lot of work that has been behind the scenes that they have done trying to make this go. So thank you for that.
We'll plan on being back here in a few weeks with more information, but I appreciate the opportunity to hear from you, and we'll keep you posted.
Okay. Thanks.
awesome. If there is nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Work out a 4-part harmony for the eye.
I'm not if I'm sick or not.